We're going in a different direction with the Apex account. The words hung in the air. I stared at Richard Keller. 3 weeks as VP of Operations, and already dismantling what I'd built over 5 years. Different direction? I asked. Fresh. Blood, fresh ideas. Apex wants innovation. The board agrees we need someone who can deliver that. My throat constricted. Apex was my account. My client. The one I'd nursed from a small-time regional player to our firm's cornerstone client. You're giving Apex to Natalie. The rumors had been swirling for days, but I'd dismissed them. Stupid. Natalie brings energy the client responds to. She's already presented them with concepts they're excited about. She's been here 8 months. I built that relationship for 5 years. My hands gripped the armrests. I missed my son's birthday, last month finalizing their Q4 strategy. No one's questioning your dedication, Daniel. Just my value, I said matter-of-factly. We'd like you to transition your files to Natalie by end of day. You'll be handling our smaller regional accounts, moving forward. A demotion, not even trying to disguise it. The Apex contract renewal is in 10 days. My voice had turned to steel. They specifically requested me in the last quarterly review. Richard, finally meeting my eyes, says, that request was overridden. By me. The room went silent. Through the glass walls, I could see Natalie at her desk, phone pressed to her ear, laughing. My desk was visible too, still covered with Apex materials I'd been revising until 2 a.m. This is a mistake. I stood. It's decided, Daniel, we need fresh blood. I extended my hand robotically. He seemed surprised but shook it. Thank you for your candor, I said with as much acidity I can muster. I walked out, past curious eyes and whispered conversations that halted as I passed. At my desk, I picked up just 3 things: my coffee mug, a small framed photo of my family, and my personal notebook. Everything else, every late night, every sacrifice, every success, I left. Behind, my security badge still worked when I left the building. They hadn't even planned enough to deactivate it yet. The engine of my car idled in the parking garage long after I should have pulled away. 5 years. 1,826 days of my life. I remembered my first day at Harrison and Frost, the ambitious boutique marketing firm that had since grown into a regional powerhouse, largely on the back of the Apex account. My account. I'd worn a new suit, kissed my wife Rachel goodbye at the door while our son Ethan, then only 3, clung to my leg asking why Daddy couldn't stay home and build Lego castles instead. I'll build you a real castle someday, buddy, I'd promised. That promise had fueled countless 14-hour days. It had justified missing soccer games. It had rationalized working through pneumonia last winter. The memory of Ethan's disappointed face when I missed his school play 6 months ago crashed over me. Harrison and Frost hadn't always been this way. When I joined, we were 20 people in a converted warehouse, ambitious and hungry. I remember Gregory Harrison himself, now retired to his yacht in the Caymans, slapping my back after I landed the then small Apex account. This one's going places, he'd told the team. Watch and learn. And they had watched as I transformed Apex from a $50,000 account to a $3.2 million cornerstone of the firm. They'd watched as I constructed elaborate marketing architectures that doubled Apex's market share in 3 years. They'd nodded appreciatively when the industry awards came in. Then Gregory retired. Frost followed suit 6 months later. The firm went to the highest bidder, a holding company that installed their own leadership team, including Richard Keller. The firm is evolving, Rachel had said last month over a dinner I was only half present for, my mind still wrestling with Apex's Q4 numbers. Maybe that's not a bad thing. I'd nodded absently, not really listening. Now her words came back with painful clarity. How many mornings had I slipped out of bed before dawn, careful not to wake her? How many weekends had I promised? Just a couple? Hours at the office that turned into full days? There was the vacation to Yosemite where I'd spent half the trip on conference calls, hiking trails with my phone pressed to my ear. Ethan had stopped asking me to attend his baseball game somewhere around year 3. Yet I'd hit every target. Exceeded most. The spreadsheet I maintained, my personal record of wins, showed an unbroken upward trajectory. Sometimes I feel like, I'm competing with your clients for attention, Rachel had said once, trying to mask the hurt with humor. I'd laughed it off, promised to do better, then stayed up until 2 a.m. finalizing a presentation. The painful irony, I justified it all as security for them, financial security, career security, a future where Ethan could attend any college he wanted, and Rachel could pursue her photography full-time instead of teaching art to pay the bills. I'd convinced myself I was sacrificing for them, when in reality, I'd been sacrificing them, sacrificing us, for the thrill of the win, for the validation that came with success. The dashboard clock read 10:17 a.m. On a normal day, I'd be deep into my second meeting by now, probably presenting strategy decks or reviewing performance metrics. Instead, I sat paralyzed in a parking garage, the weight of years pressing down on me. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "Everything okay? You never leave work this early?" I stared at it, a hollow laugh escaping me. Even my wife found it inconceivable that I might come home during business hours. I didn't tell Rachel what happened that day. Not really. I said there had been restructuring, and I was reassessing my options. The words felt empty, corporate speak I'd absorbed over years of meetings. She looked relieved rather than concerned, which told me everything about how my work life balance had deteriorated. "Take some time," she said, squeezing my hand across our kitchen island. "You've earned it." Time became my unexpected ally. I slept past 5 a.m. for the first time in years. I attended Ethan's baseball practice and discovered he'd developed into quite the pitcher. I fixed the garage door that had been sticking for 18 months. Week 1, my phone rang constantly. Colleagues asking what happened, clients confused by my absence. I let most calls go to voicemail. The ones I did answer I kept brief and vague. By week 3, the calls had mostly stopped. Except for Marcus from IT Security, who called about finalizing your system access termination. "I still need to log in to submit my expense reports," I said, injecting just the right amount of confusion in my voice. "Oh, right. HR didn't mention that. I'll keep your credentials active for now," Marcus replied. He'd always liked me since I'd helped him troubleshoot his fantasy football website on my own time. A small window, but potentially useful. I began waking early again, but not to rush to the office. Instead, I sat in our home study with coffee, making notes. Detailed notes. I remembered conversations from years ago, strategic decisions, administrative passwords casually shared during late-night crunch sessions. The network architecture diagram I'd glimpsed when the CTO left it on the conference room table. The backup schedule I knew from times when the system went down during my weekend work sessions. I created a private email account and reached out to old contacts. People who had left Harrison and Frost over the years, many of whom still respected my work. "Just checking in," I wrote, thinking about future opportunities. Carefully casual follow-up calls revealed pieces of information. Natalie was struggling with Apex's complex approval hierarchies. The quarterly review meeting had gone okay, but not great. Richard was pushing aggressive growth projections that the team thought unrealistic. I didn't write any of this down, I didn't need to. At night, I logged into the Harrison and Frost systems using my still active credentials. I didn't take anything or sabotage any files. That would be illegal and beneath me. I simply observed, read emails I was copied on before my access was inevitably cut, noted meeting schedules, downloaded my own work product that I had legal rights to as the creator. One night I noticed something interesting. Natalie had completely rewritten my Apex strategy for the upcoming contract renewal. Gone was the carefully researched market expansion plan I'd developed. In its place, a flashy but shallow campaign focused on social media metrics and influencer partnerships, precisely the approach Apex's CEO Jonathan Barrett had explicitly rejected in our last 3 meetings. I closed the laptop without commenting or intervening, just observed and remembered. 4 months after my departure, an old client called me directly. "Daniel, I need your perspective," said Christine Lin, CMO. "At Momentum Technologies, we're considering moving our business to Harrison and Frost, but something feels off about their pitch. Thought you might provide insights since you used to work there." "Happy to help," I replied, my tone measured and professional. Though I should note I'm no longer affiliated with them. Our conversation lasted an hour. I never disparaged my former employer. I simply asked Christine questions about what she was looking for and what Harrison and Frost had proposed. Her answers told me they were making the same mistakes with her company that they were now making with Apex. "Thanks for your candor," Christine said before hanging up. "I think we'll hold off on making any decisions for now." A week later, I heard, through my network, that Momentum Technologies had declined to sign with Harrison and Frost. The first small domino had fallen. 6 months after my unceremonious exit, I incorporated my own consultancy, Pinnacle Strategic Advisors. No employees yet, just me, my expertise, and my network. My first call was to Jonathan Barrett at Apex. "Jonathan, it's Daniel Reeves. Do you have a moment?" A pause, then warmth flooded his voice. "Daniel, where have you been? Harrison and Frost told us you'd moved on to other opportunities." "That's one way of putting it," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "I've launched my own consultancy." "About time," Jonathan said. "The new team handling our account. Let's just say they're not you." I didn't press for details, didn't need to fish for complaints. Instead, I steered the conversation toward Jonathan's business challenges, the ones I knew intimately from years of partnership. We scheduled a coffee meeting for the following week. That night, I logged into Harrison and Frost's systems one final time. My access should have been terminated months ago, but bureaucratic oversight had worked in my favor. I navigated to the Apex project folders, not to sabotage but to understand what I was up against. What I found confirmed my suspicions. Natalie had completely abandoned the foundation I'd built, replacing substantive strategy with trendy marketing jargon and superficial campaigns. The most troubling discovery: they had significantly reduced the budget allocated for regulatory compliance review, a critical element for Apex, which operated in a heavily regulated industry. I made note of this without taking any action, then logged out for the last time. At coffee with Jonathan, I listened more than I spoke. When he described Harrison and Frost's new vision for Apex's brand, I asked simple, clarifying questions that led him to his own conclusions. "They don't really understand our regulatory constraints, do they?" Jonathan finally said, frowning over his cappuccino. I shrugged slightly. "Every agency has different areas of expertise." "Would you be open to consulting directly with us?" Jonathan asked. "Not to replace them, at least not yet, but to ensure our compliance standards are maintained." It was exactly what I had hoped for, but I appeared to consider it carefully. I could offer a compliance review service. Limited scope, no conflict, with your existing agency relationship. 2 weeks later, I had a signed contract with Apex, modest in scope but giving me visibility into everything Harrison and Frost was doing for them. I never criticized their work directly. I simply raised questions about regulatory implications and documented everything meticulously. Meanwhile, I reached out to 3 other former clients with similar offers of specialized consulting services that complemented rather than competed with Harrison and Frost's work. 2 accepted. In month 7, the trap I hadn't set but had recognized was coming sprang on its own. Harrison and Frost launched Apex's new campaign without the proper regulatory disclosures, an oversight that would have been caught in the compliance review process I had always insisted upon, the same process Natalie had deemed unnecessarily cautious. The campaign went live on a Tuesday. By Wednesday afternoon, regulators had issued a formal warning. By Thursday, Apex was facing preliminary fines and had pulled the campaign. Jonathan called me in a panic. "This is exactly what you used to prevent," he said. "They assured us everything was compliant." "I'm sorry to hear that," I replied, genuine in my concern for Apex but unsurprised by the development. "How can I help? Can you come in tomorrow? We need someone who understands both our regulatory landscape and our marketing needs." I agreed, not mentioning that I had already prepared a comprehensive crisis management plan anticipating precisely this scenario. The Apex crisis meeting was held in their executive boardroom, the same room where I'd presented countless times before. Now I sat on the client side of the table beside Jonathan, facing the Harrison and Frost team. Richard Keller sat front and center, flanked by Natalie and 2 agency lawyers. "This is a minor setback," Richard was saying, his confidence unwavering, despite the chaos he'd created. "We can adjust the campaign messaging and relaunch within a week." Jonathan's expression darkened. "Minor? The regulatory body is threatening fines of up to $2 million, which our insurance will cover," Richard countered smoothly. I remained silent, observing. Natalie avoided my gaze entirely. "And the reputational damage?" Jonathan asked. "Our stock dipped 8% yesterday. News cycles are short," Richard said dismissively. "We'll counter with positive press." I noticed Jonathan's jaw tighten, the same tell I'd learned to recognize over years of working with him. He was about to lose his temper. "Jonathan," I said quietly, sliding a folder across the table to him. "My first words since introductions. Perhaps this might be helpful. He opened it to find my crisis management protocol, 30 pages of detailed response strategies, compliance remediation steps, and communication templates. Richard frowned. "What's this?" "A pathway forward," Jonathan replied, already scanning the document. He passed it to his CFO, who nodded appreciatively after reviewing. "The first few pages." "Daniel prepared this?" the CFO asked. Jonathan nodded. "We should be discussing this as partners," Richard interjected, color rising in his face. "Not bringing in outside consultants." "Daniel isn't an outside consultant," Jonathan corrected. "He's been advising us on compliance matters for weeks, which is fortunate, given recent events. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "You've been working with our client behind our backs?" Richard directed this at me, voice tight. I met his gaze calmly. "I've been providing specialized compliance consulting at Apex's request. My engagement letter specifically noted it was complementary to your agency relationship, which we would never have needed if you hadn't gutted our compliance protocols," Jonathan added, anger finally breaking through. The meeting deteriorated rapidly from there. Accusations flew, documents were demanded. When Apex's legal counsel joined by phone and began asking pointed questions about Harrison and Frost's review processes, Richard's confidence finally cracked. "Natalie assured me the compliance review was thorough," he said, throwing her under the bus without hesitation. Natalie's head snapped up. "I used the reduced scope you approved," she countered. "You said Daniel's processes were overcautious and inefficient." I sat quietly as Harrison and Frost imploded from within. No sabotage needed, just the natural consequence of prioritizing flash over substance. By meeting's end, Jonathan had announced 2 decisions. Harrison and Frost was suspended pending review, and I was being retained to lead the crisis management effort. As we left the boardroom, Richard caught my arm. "You planned this," he hissed. I looked at his hand until he removed it from my sleeve. "No, Richard, you did. I just didn't stop you." Within days, word spread through the industry. 2 more Harrison and Frost clients called me directly, concerned about their own regulatory exposure. By the end of the month, Harrison and Frost had lost 5 major accounts, representing nearly 40% of their revenue. I never had to say a negative word about them. Their own shortcuts did all the damage necessary. 7 months after being told the firm needed fresh blood, I sat across from Harrison and Frost's board chairman in a downtown restaurant. Rain streaked the windows, blurring the city lights beyond. "We'd like you to come back," he said without preamble. "Richard has been removed. The Apex situation." He trailed off, then cleared his throat. "We've lost significant accounts." "I'm aware," I replied, taking a slow sip of water. "Your reputation in the industry remains stellar. Clients ask for you specifically." He leaned forward. "We're prepared to offer you Richard's position plus equity stake." I studied him. This man who had approved my demotion without ever speaking to me directly. "That's a generous offer," I said. "We need you," he admitted. "Apex is threatening litigation over the compliance failure. They've indicated they might reconsider if you were back at the helm." Of course they had. I drafted that leverage point for Jonathan myself. I set my glass down precisely in the center of its coaster. "I appreciate your candor, but I must decline." His face fell. "We can discuss compensation." "It's not about money," I interrupted. Gently. "My consultancy is doing well. I've signed 6 clients in 7 months, 3 of whom were previously with Harrison and Frost. The unspoken message hung between us. I didn't need them anymore. What would it take?" he asked finally. "Nothing," I said simply. "But I would be open to discussing a strategic partnership between my firm and yours. Pinnacle Strategic Advisors handling compliance and strategic development, with Harrison and Frost executing creative production." His eyes widened slightly as he realized what I was proposing, not a return but a power shift. Me above, them below. 2 weeks later, we signed the partnership agreement. Harrison and Frost became, in effect, the production arm of my growing consultancy. Apex dropped their litigation threat. 3 more former Harrison and Frost clients signed with Pinnacle. I hired Rachel as my operations director. I never sought revenge. I simply stepped aside and let poor strategy reveal itself. Then I built something better from the wreckage. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel reminding me about Ethan's science fair tonight. I replied that I'd be leaving. The office in 20 minutes. As I packed up my laptop, I glanced at the framed photo on my desk. The same one I'd taken from Harrison and Frost that day 7 months ago. Ethan, Rachel, and me at the lake last summer. In the background stood a sandcastle we'd built together. Not quite the real castle I'd once promised to build, but Ethan had declared it perfect anyway.